Hey guys, today we're back with the how to create a Moba in Unity tutorial series, and this is part 2 where we're going to cover the basics of spawning minions in one corner or one base, and then having them path to the other side of the map, and then setting up 3 separate lanes for that to happen. Very standard, like Moba minion mechanics, that sort of thing. We'll just get sorted. So following off from part 1 where we did the player navigation, the first thing we're going to do today is just make sure that we have our grey boxes set up and just that it kind of replicates what a Moba map might look like in a very rough sense. So I'm just going to right click over here and create an empty game object and just call this walls. And then I'm just going to take the cubes that we've made so far and just shift click them all and child them to the walls game object. And we're just going to move these around and just set up a quick map here. So just going to stretch this out, make it much thinner, and we'll want to do the first part of the bottom wall, and then from there we'll probably just copy and paste all of these. So this is probably a bit too long, so we'll just shorten it a bit more. And that looks good. And just to remember from the first tutorial that all these cubes are ticked as static, so we'll need to reapply the nav mesh when we do that. So let's just see here, I'll move this along. Probably also a little too long. And again, we're just grey boxing this out, just getting a rough idea of what the pathing will look like, and just so we can see the AI in action that we create for the minions. So what I'll probably do here is just fast forward ahead and then show this once it's finally done and we've got a rough outline done for us. Okay, from here we've created an extremely rough grey box. Obviously this isn't something permanent or something that we'll keep around for very long, but it will just give us a rough idea of what the nav mesh will look like. So if we go into the navigation tab, if you don't have this here pinned, you can just go to Window, AI, Navigation, and then it will come up. And we're just going to rebake our nav mesh. And if I turn on the gizmos, again, it's created a nav mesh where wherever it's light blue, the AI or the minions that we create will be able to traverse. Obviously on top of the walls and inside the walls it's light blue as well, but because it's such a steep incline, they wouldn't be able to climb up the walls essentially. So now that that's sorted, what we'll need to do is create a script. So I'm just going to create a new folder and call this rename the folder, call it minions. And if you're worried about setting this nav mesh up yourself, I'll include the project files in the comments as well, so you'll be able to just download this and work from this spot on. And then within the folder, I'm just going to create a C# script and call it game manager, and we're just going to create the script that's going to manage the game state. And I'm just going to create an empty object, call this game manager, and we're just going to put the scripts. If we go into the inspector, just put the script on here, and then if we open this up, okay, so within this script, what we'll need to do is set up a public game object, and we're just going to call this minion prefab. And what we'll do is create a prefab for the minion that is going to be instantiated. Another thing I'll do is create a public vector free. And what this is the location that we're going to spawn the minion in. I've got in my notes that this will be, let's see, -40, 1 in the Y, and then -40 in the Z. And the reason why we're setting this up is so at first we'll spawn them on one side, but we'll also have to spawn minions on the other side of the map. So it's good to, we can do one at first and then set up the other, and it will just be pretty much the same both ways. Then in the update, we will need to create a new game object. We'll call this, a new game object. Call this minion spawned. And then the minion spawned is going to be an instantiation of the prefab we just made, or the prefab we just assigned, the location, and then quaternion.identity, which is essentially just no rotation. And then we do that. And the reason why we're setting it up like this is now that we've referenced the game object we've instantiated, in the future we'll be able to then reference it, maybe get a component from it like a script, and then feed it information like, for example, if you're spawning it on the blue side of the map versus the red side of the map, you would spawn it as a different color, or you'd spawn it in a different location, and you'd have it set to a different destination on the nav mesh. So if we go back into Unity, what we'll next need to do is set up the prefab for our minion. So if we just go to the minions folder, and then we'll also want to create a Minion AI script. Also, we'll want to go to the hierarchy, create a 3D object, and just create a capsule. We can set this to 0, 0, 0. In fact, 1 in the y-axis. And then if we just move towards this, we've just got a pretty standard capsule. I'm just going to, for now, give it the blue material we gave the play in the last tutorial. And this is just the basic material. With blue painted on it, just so we'll be able to set up a blue one and a red minion in the future and have them go across the map. We'll also need to add a nav mesh agent to the prefab, and we'll just call this minion prefab. And yeah, I think that's all set up. So if we just go into the minions folder once again, drop it in, and now we've created a prefab. And so if we go into the prefab, what this means is every time you have a prefab, if you edit it in the prefab menu and then spawn it or instantiate it anywhere, it's always going to be the same, and anything you change here will affect all copies of it essentially. So if we just put the script that we just created that's empty, load that script up, and then from here, we'll be able to make the AI for the minion. Okay, so the first thing we'll need to do for the Minion AI is we'll go to the top and make sure we're using the Unity Engine.ai library. And that will allow us to use functions and such that are associated with the nav mesh. We're going to set up 2 variables, the first one being a destination, so we'll just create a vector free, call it destination. That's good. And the other thing we want is the nav mesh agent, and we'll just call this agent, and that should be fine as well. And then in the start method, we just want to reference the nav mesh agent that's on this game object. So what we do is we go agent is equal to this dot get component, and then we'll do nav mesh agent. And very simply, that's just assign this variable to that component so we can then reference that in future. And then we'll go to agent and we need to set a destination for it to move towards. And simply we can just use the destination variable. And you might realize, well, we haven't declared anything as the destination. But what's great was what we're doing here is we can go back to the game manager. And within the game manager, we can assign the destination. So what we'll do here is minion spawned, because this is a reference to the game object we'd be making. We say .get component, and then we say the Minion AI script that we want. And then we put destination, which is the variable that was unassigned, and we'll just set a location. So what I can do here is set a location for the red spawn point. So we'll say red spawn location. I believe that's just 4E140. And then we'll just assign this here. One thing you may be wondering is, why would we instantiate, then give information to an object when we could just create a bunch of prefabs that already have that information and just spawn them already? This is a little bit better for communicating between a game manager and the means, so we can transfer information between two scripts. Also means potentially some of the minions will be top lane, mid lane, bottom lane. We'll be able to give them different assignments when we instantiate them, and it's a little bit more flexible using this method. One thing we also need to make sure of is this is just in a update function. So what I'll need to do is create an if statement so this just doesn't run every single frame. And I'll just say if spawn equals true, we'll instantiate the minion, and I'll just set spawn to false. I didn't mean to do that. I'll just need to create a bool spawn equals true, and then we'll just go down here and say spawn equals false. And what this should do is now when we go back into the game, it should only spawn one minion for us. So if we go back into Unity, okay, so back into Unity, we'll go to the minion and we won't need to set the destination. If we just go back, we'll save these changes. It's actually the game manager we want to go to, and we want to put the minion prefab in the game manager. So we'll just go here, plug it in, and now when we press play, we should see a minion spawn. I'm just going to delete this prefab that's in the scene as well. And if we just click play, if we go back to the scene view, as you can see, we've spawned a minion in the blue spawn location, and its destination is set to the red spawn location. So this is good. In the future, obviously, we'll have to make interactions with towers and other obstacles and potentially players that these minions will interact with. But what we still need to do just to get this basic setup done is we'll also need to make sure when we spawn the minion that we spawn multiple, and that some of them will path to the top lane and some of them will path through the bottom lane. So we'll just need to go back into the script and set that up. So if we go back into our game manager, okay, so in our game manager, we'll need to set up a couple of extra vector-free variables. And this is just going to be the location of bot lane and the location of top lane. So for the bot lane, it is new vector-free, and I believe it's still 41, and then it's -40. And that will give us the location for the bot lane. And if we just copy and paste, it's just the inverse for top lane. So we'll just do top lane location, and we'll do -40 in the X and 40 in the Z. Cool. So these are now locations we can set as the destination for the minion. Let's see. So the best way to go about this is probably just running this code 3 times, though this is pretty messy. So if we just say this destination will be bot lane location, and this destination will be top lane location, there's a good chance, obviously, as we move along and as we code this, that this won't be the final way we write this, and obviously we'll spawn many minions in the game. But sometimes it's just good to get like the basics out of the way, and as you see problems occur or you want to refactor your code, we can then readdress it and come back to this. So if we just save that and then go back into the game, okay, and then back in Unity, if we just click play, and if we go to the scene mode, very simply we can see that each one of these minions is pathing top, mid, and bottom. What's interesting to see is because I've set the destination to roughly this point, they are going against the wall. So what I might want to do is set this destination just a little bit further down and set the destination just a little bit further up here, so they're moving along the middle of the lane. The other thing I'll need to do as well is go into the Minion's actual script, AI script, and basically tell them, hey, once you've reached bot lane or you've reached top lane, your last destination will be the other side of the map. So we'll need to go back into the AI and set that up. If we first go to the game manager, let's just see what 45 minus 45 looks like here. And this might look a little better just so they're not rubbing up against the lane. And obviously, the wall along the lane, and obviously that looks not too bad in the mid lane because they're just going straight across the middle. So if we just restart that and see how that looks. Oh yeah, we need to go to the scene view, and looks practically the same. Let's see, minus 45. Okay, so I realized what the problem was, the pathing that was going on is these are set to public, and that means they were still assigned to 40(1), 40 in the inspector, in the engine. So we'll just delete public off all these because that's not necessary in this scenario. And that would just mean that whatever we set the variable in the script is what it's going to be set to. So I'll just save that there. So as for the next part is we're going to need to tell the minion once it's reached its location in top or bot lane to go to its destination. So what I'm going to do is actually create a new public vector free and call this, I guess, final destination. Cool. And then if we go back into our game manager, for the times where we spawn a bot lane and a top lane minion, we're going to also need to set a final destination. And so we go here, we put in final dot destination, and this is going to ultimately be the red spawn location. And if we just do the same here, so what this will do is pass on the information necessary to where the minion's going to go in the script. And the only thing we need to do now is set up an if statement for once the AI reaches its first destination to then move on to its final destination. So in the case of top lane, let's see, top lane, it's minus 45 in the X and plus 45 in the Y. So what we can say is if this dot transform dot position dot X is greater than, sorry, I've already forgot. So we'll do top lane first. So minus 45 and 45. So it'll be less than or equal to minus 44. And this dot transform dot position dot z is greater than or equal to 45, then we need to set it to the final destination. So agent dot set destination, and we'll plug in the final destination here, and we'll just do this again for bot lane, which is just the inverse, so it's positive 44 and minus, I'll set it to 44 again instead of 45, and I'll just put some comments. Top lane destination true, and then the same for bot lane. Now again, this might not be the final way this is set out, but generally when I'm making a game, when I'm working on a project like this, it's just getting code that works, code that makes sense, and then going from there, building it out, and then refactoring it as and when necessary if I feel like the old code that's written is particularly hard to read, particularly messy, or just doesn't make sense for the system we've built out. So if we go back to engine, and if we click play again, we should now get them pathing a bit better, and also pathing to the correct location. So we've got a problem here, and that is that they're pathing all to their final destination straight away, which should be pretty straightforward. It looks like I've probably written this poorly. Yeah, so what I needed to do here is say greater than 44 and less than minus 44. So then if we go back into the game, once the script's loaded, we'll just click play. And sure enough, now they're actually assigned correctly, the locations. So they're just going to path, they're pathing down the lane. They're still hugging the wall more than I would like. So we would be able to set better pathing and destinations in the future. But for now, I think this is perfectly fine. It's working. We're roughly getting what we want. And roughly when it passes the point here, it changes its destination. And we'll move into the final spawn location. So the last thing I want to do is just create it so regardless of which side we spawn them on, the minion's either going to go to red base from blue or blue base from red. So if we just go back into the script. So to actually get the minions to spawn from the other side of the map is actually pretty straightforward. So what we just do is we copy this block of code, and we'll probably want to comment this out and just say blue minion instantiate, and then we'll just comment out the one below and just say red minion. And all we need to do here is change the spawn location. So it would be the blue would now be red spawn location in the instantiate field. So here, here, and here. And then the final destination will now need to be the blue spawn location. So just the inverse. So we can copy that and paste that here, here, and here. And now we're going to spawn 3 minions on the other side of the map. So if we just go back into the engine, and there you have it. You have them spawning on the top right, bottom left, and as they go down, as they go up, they should move into the correct location. So we'll just watch that here, make sure that happens. Yep, so the middle ones that meet first have continued on their path, and here they should just swap paths, even though they bump into each other slightly, but that's fine. And yeah, that's all working. The last thing I'll probably do here is just duplicate this prefab, and then in this new prefab, I'm just going to change the base color to red, come out and see if that's worked, and we'll just call this red minion prefab. And then what I'll also want to do is in the game manager, create another variable for this, and we'll just call this red minion prefab. And then what we can do is, they're sharing the same material, so I will need to create a new material for that. So I'll just create materials, and then we'll just create a red one. And then so on the red one, we'll put this material. Let's just scroll down, drag it on, that's fine. And I'll also create a new material for the blue one as well, because we're using the player material, but that's obviously no longer going to make sense for our project. That was just a quick way of setting it up earlier. So if I save this prefab, go into the blue one and just drag this down. Also, save that and just double checking. So now they've got the two materials set up. I'll rename this red one to red minion map. And if we go into the game manager, once again, we've set that up. So here, I'm just going to use the separate prefab. Now, what we could do is have one prefab with two materials on it and have it switch between them. That might be what we do in the future. But just for this video right now, I thought it would be cool visually just to see this working. So if we go back into the game, hopefully this will work. And as you see, because we were using the player material originally, the player is now red. Oh, we haven't assigned it into our game manager. That's no problem though. We just go here and make sure we assign the red minion. Cool, and then if we go into the scene, we've set it up. So in this episode, we've kind of covered the basics of spawning minions, kind of how we set up their navigation, and how when they reach destinations, we can have them re-navigate. Obviously, there's a lot of complexity to the AI. They're going to have to interact with potentially AI characters, the player, buildings and towers along the way. So I think up next, we'll probably tackle the towers and maybe the damage and health aspects of the minions and the towers interacting with each other. If you've enjoyed this video, if it's been any help to you, please consider giving us a like or commenting down below, and you can always hit the subscribe button. Thank you.